Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another segment of Coffee and Connections with the Chief. I'm Chief Dean Rondeau, and to my left is my executive officer, Captain Mark Livy. So we're through January, and that was challenging, and we're now into February. So, and it's all good. Welcome to 2022. It's a new year. Things are going well. We've made it through the initial stages of our budget process. We have a very tight budget. I'm very excited about it. A few minor changes made by Budget Committee and others, but nothing really that's too extravagant. So I'm looking forward to a very good 2022. The town vote is, the deliberative session is coming up on 8 February, Captain? 8 February. And then the town vote is coming up on 8 March, right? So second Tuesday of each month, essentially. So that's easy enough to remember. So please, an awful lot of work went into both the town's operating budget and certainly the police department budget. And I would encourage all of our citizens listening and watching to go ahead and to vote in support of those budgets. There's not a lot of difference between the town's operating budget and the default budget number one that I recall. There's not a whole lot of difference at all. Less than 1%. Warrant articles should be made on an individual basis, but the operating budgets are sound. They're very sound, and in fact, the vice chair of the budget committee even made a lot of comments about that. And so, pardon me, real quick. Made an awful lot of comments about that, good comments about that, and there was an awful lot of work that went into not just from the various department heads, but also the police commission, the board of selectmen, the town manager's office, the budget committee. There's a lot of eyes looking at those budgets. All these budgets are really good, and so I would encourage all of our citizens to go ahead and support the town's operating budget. I think it's a very sound budget, and it really does give the department heads the tools and the resources they need to do their jobs. So that being said, month of February, we got Valentine's Day coming up on the 14th, so don't forget about that. That's really, really important. February school vacation. Be mindful that's gonna be upon us before we know it. The kids will be out playing by the side of the road. Just be really careful. Again, it's winter in Wolfeboro, right? It's winter in the Northeast, so you got to leave a good 15 minutes or so ahead of time before you get to your destinations. Roads are going to be slippery and slick. Just be careful. Use your four-wheel drive or your all-wheel drive if you have it. All right, I can't emphasize that enough. And the reason I keep emphasizing that, because I was actually at a 5-car motor vehicle collision on Keonka Hill, and the woman was driving a 4-wheel drive vehicle, but in 2-wheel drive. And she said, well, my husband told me never to put it in 4-wheel drive. And she was sliding all over the road, and she caused a 5-car motor vehicle pileup. And that's not good. If you have that capability, you need to use that capability. And then once you get onto clear terrain, you can take it out of all-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. But don't cause a 5-car motor vehicle pileup. And that logic about never using 4-wheel drive, even if you have it, is really old school. It's 2022. We have very good technology that goes into developing these 4-wheel drive vehicles. So go ahead and use it. You put it in, put it out. It's all push-button operation. So don't be afraid to use it. Jessica's law, right? If you've got snow on the top of your vehicle, you got to clean it off before that vehicle hits the road. Okay? That's just all there is to it. If you get stopped, you probably will be given a ticket if you have snow on your roof. And the reason being is we don't want snow and ice flying off and obstructing the vision of an oncoming car, or breaking a windshield, or causing injury, or God forbid, a fatality. So please, just take a few minutes. I do it. The captain does it. Clear off the roof of your vehicle. Invest in a snow broom. They're about $5. You can get them at any dollar store. You push the snow right off the top of your vehicle, and it takes, and you're safe. It takes no time at all. Other than that, everything is going well at the Wolfeboro PD. We're full strength in both the police side and dispatch side. business as usual. As you know, the Wolfeboro Police Department is 24/7, 365. Our doors are always open, thanks to our very talented dispatch staff. And it is a place of refuge. So if you are in danger, if you feel you're being threatened, if you feel somebody's driving behind you, pull right into the Wolfeboro PD. There's always men and women from dispatch in the station, and they will radio or notify an officer right away to come to your assistance. Having said that, I'm going to turn it over to my captain for his operational update. Captain.
Thanks, Chief. I want to start off by saying at the beginning of last year, well, the beginning of this year, but the beginning of last month, we did have a tragic accident on the lake, and it just shows you, I mean, this is a beautiful place to live, but the lake is a dangerous, it's dangerous. I mean, the water can be dangerous out there, especially if it's not frozen. And we had it off the shore of the Wolfeboro properties, and we lost a young individual that day. So it's very tragic, and we just want you to remember that the water out there, if it's ice, yes, walk on it, make sure it's safe. Going out on a boat or a kayak late at night, wear a life vest. Those save lives. I mean, they help you if you fall in the water. The water is cold. I think the chief has mentioned it many times last month. When you fall into that water in January, February,
it's going to be paralyzed.
Yeah, it's gonna take you under, and you won't be able to move. You'll go numb, and the life vest will help you, and we'll get rescue out there. And fire and rescue, Wolfeboro Fire and Rescue train for this. This is what they do. They train out on that water a lot. They do it multiple times in a month to train for water rescues. And Marine Patrol, Fish and Game, they do all this. This is what they do. Give them a chance, and give them a chance to save your life if something does tragic happen like that. But I just want to put that out there. Be safe, be careful, prepare, especially when you're out in that water or anywhere that hiking or anything like that, same thing. Just prepare yourself, be safe. With the operation of the police and fire, everything's going well, nothing really to report as we move forward. I know we had some changes with duties, with sergeants and stuff like that. We do that every so often. We switch them up a little, get a different duty, different task, gets them more familiar with all the aspects of the job of being a supervisor and a sergeant with the Wolfeboro Police Department. So as we mentioned before, as always, radar complaints, speed complaints always went to Sergeant Michael Strzok. He was our operational. Right now, so he's moved over to administrative sergeant, and Sergeant Jared Bulio, he has moved into the operational sergeant. So he will be taking over those complaints that you need to come through, and the radar signs, the radar trailer, getting that out there, reviewing that data, and getting our officers out in those areas on the dates and times that are more efficient for our operation. So if you get a complaint about speed, it's Sergeant Bulio. You want to give him a call, just give the PD a call, 569-1444. You can email him. You can get that right on our web page or our Facebook page. It's all there. Everything's all there. So you can directly communicate with him, or you can contact us, and we can give that message to him. That's easy for us to do. So we want to just get that out there. So the administrative now is going to be Sergeant Strzok. Sergeant Sparrow is keeping with the service. He's doing an excellent job there with our Facebook page, community relations with the schools, the towns, and all the other relations that are out there to help us with the community and do special projects and out there. So he's doing a wonderful job. Dispatch is moving on with full staff, like I mentioned before. Nothing's changed in there. They're moving on. I think next month we'll get the full stats, and I'll have that out for March for 2021. We'll get the stats for police, and we'll get the stats for dispatch, the calls coming in there. So other than that, that's all I got for the month of February.
So upcoming for the month of March will be the support that we give to New Hampshire Special Olympics. The Wolfeboro PD has been partnered with New Hampshire Special Olympics now for well over 30 years, and maybe even close to 40. And this March, coming up once again, will be the what I call the Penguin Plunge. We'll be jumping off a dock somewhere, probably down off of Clearwater Ledges where we did last year, into the frozen waters of Lake Winnipesaukee. And we'll be doing it to raise money for the Hampshire Special Olympics. Now, last year we raised quite a bit of money. And we had a very good showing. And the officers, myself included, are signing up for that Penguin Plunge. So we're looking for your support. Any amount is appreciated. You can find out what officers are signed up just by going to the Special Olympics webpage. We'll have that put on the TV for you. Of course, I signed up back in January. Feel free to go ahead and donate under my name if you like. That's awesome. I'm hoping to have Eastern Propane with their warming trailer and heaters out there and so forth and so on. Now look, we've emphasized very heavily over the last couple of months. You got to take precautions about going into the water and doing that. And we do that. I do write an operations order. I do have plenty of support. I have firefighters that are actually in the water supporting us, and they're in their exposure suits in case there's an emergency. We have warming trailers and propane heaters, and everybody is protected, and they're in and out of the water in a moment's notice. So we're taking all these precautions. So learn something from the Wolfeboro Police Department. If we're going to do an operation in and around water, there is a 5-paragraph operations order. There is plenty of support in case something goes awry. And so learn from us, right? There's a right way and a wrong way to do things, and we always look to mitigate. We can't eliminate risk, but we can mitigate risk, and we can mitigate it safely to an acceptable level. So having said that, my captain wants to say something.
So I got to mention, you won't see my name on that site because somebody needs to film this, So I took that duty because somebody needs to do it.
Somebody needs to oversee the safety aspect.
Yeah, so you'll see myself on Facebook Live filming them because somebody needs to do that. And I took it. You know what? I took that responsibility, and I'm going out there and I'm going to film them while they jump into that cold, cold water.
Having said that, yes, I will tell you the water is indeed paralyzing, but yes, the captain does have the virtue of being in the Tesla, which, by the way, has heated seats and heated steering wheel. It comes standard in all their models. Sorry, just going to resist that. But in any event, yeah, it's a great cause to donate to. It's very worthwhile cause. We've been supporting Special Olympics in a variety of capacities for like I said, well over 30 years. So please help us support New Hampshire Special Olympics. It's a very worthwhile cause. Please feel free to donate under my name, and I think it's great. And again, my hat goes off to Chuck Clements and Ciderberry and the team down there at Eastern Propane that provides us all the warming trailers and the propane at no charge to the Wolfeboro PD, so we can put on this very important operation, and we really appreciate it. Having said that, come on out in March. We'll have the date for you, but come on out in March and enjoy the festivities or watch it on Facebook. And feel free, if it's entertaining enough for you, and I hope it is, go ahead and make a donation. Again, any amount is deeply appreciated. Any amount at all is deeply appreciated. So having said that, I'm going to wrap it up with the safety tip of the month, so stay tuned. But I want to thank you all for tuning in to Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And remember, Valentine's Day, 14 February. Remember school vacation week. Remember, clean off the snow off the top of your car. I want you to have a safe and wonderful 2022. In the meantime, all my best, and we'll see you again next month. And oh, by the way, March, my birthday. Okay, my birthday. Just saying, my birthday. See you in March. Thanks. Bye-bye.
I'm Jim Stevens, and I'm here with Dean Rondo, our police chief, and I want to ask him a question about building, a respect and cooperation across our town, our citizens, and our kids in particular in high school, that they appreciate what police do and where they can be of help versus and be safer. Chief, that'd be my question.
Sure. So that's a great question. Of course, I've known Jim for a number of years now, and he's heavily involved in a lot of community enterprises and projects and community building, which is really good. And that's a great question, Jim. And the answer is yes, we do. We have a school resource officer that's stationed at the high school that does a lot of these interactions with the students on a daily basis throughout the course of the school year. We also, and not just with Kingswood, but we also get involved when it's a non-COVID year. We get heavily involved with Brewster Academy as well, where we're in the classrooms, we're in teaching classes, we're guest speakers at a lot of these functions, involved in their academics, whether it's a history class or I go up at Kingswood every year. I'm up there 2 or 3 times a year where I teach a block of instruction on practical application of mathematics and physics and how it's used in law enforcement. In years past, at Brewster Academy, for example, we've been involved in police forensic sciences in the chemistry program and talking to them about how we use various principles to solve crime, whether it's identification of DNA or fingerprint analysis, different chemicals used to lift and combine with the oils from the skin to lift and identify fingerprints and a number of things. So again, a practical application of how science and mathematics and physics are used in law enforcement. So yes, we do have a lot of those types of community programs that are ongoing. Did you?
How do you help the town and everyone deal with the growing problems of narcotics, illegal substances, and the availability and all the money that's around it? There's a lot of trails to follow, I assume.
Well, that's a great question. So let's start initially in the schools. So we do have, that's one of the reasons we have a school resource officer in the school, and that's one of her responsibilities, is to help educate the children about the dangers of drugs and narcotics and substance abuse. We are heavily involved in programs like smoking cessation, where we encourage, if young men and women are on the wrong side of the law, so to speak, we do encourage the smoking cessation course as part of our juvenile services program. If you remember correctly, a couple of years ago, we added the juvenile services officer who works with the children, with the families, and helping to identify some of these issues and some of these problems and to fix these problems in the family before these people become recidivists or repeat offenders and as adults, right? So we want to take a very proactive approach and get in the families when we identify these problems. And that was the whole purpose of not just the school resource officer position, but the juvenile officer position, right? The juvenile services officer position, which is to work with these offenders once they become identified through the system. Jim, the last thing I wanted to do was create a pipeline from school to prison, right? We don't want to do that. We know that's a bad model. That model hasn't worked for the United States in the last 40 years. What we want to do is try a different approach, and education and rehabilitation are the core principles of the juvenile justice system. So again, that was the reason we created that position specifically to work with those kids. The other things that we do, there are a number of community organizations and groups that we support. We do make referrals to the White Horse Addiction Center up in Ossipee. We are heavily involved with some of the other groups in town that are looking to identify and have community meetings on the dangers of drug abuse, and we do that. There was a group that was run out of the All Saints Church and the First Christian. Yeah, so we have worked with the group from the First Christian Church that is heavily involved in counter drug and counter narcotic training. So those are the things that we do, working with the community in trying to eradicate drugs. Of course, drugs are the primary driver of most 90% of your crime. The crime that you see, and not just in Wolfeboro, but this would be all across the country, right? So this is what drives it.
They have to raise the money. They have to get money in their hands to be able to support the habit.
Well, that's part of it. That's what we see a lot here. That's part of it, right? I mean, you're absolutely correct. That's called subsistence dealing or subsistence usage. What you're seeing is that somebody who's terribly addicted to drugs, most principally, some narcotic, whether it's an opiate or whether it's a synthetic drug like crystal methamphetamine, they're making or they're buying and selling the drug to support their own habit. And it's called subsistence dealing. That's what we see a lot of in this area. Very rarely do you see what we would call the drug enterprise leader, right? That would be somebody like you would see on Miami Vice or the old TV show where they're going against the Colombian drug cartel, for example. But so we don't have that type of problem, but we do have a drug problem. And you're right, it is bad. And it's something that we've been battling, ever since I've been a police officer, 26 years. Yeah, it can be.
What do you teach the students about police records? In other words, how a police record can be in your way for a long time if you develop one, if you're on the wrong track, and do they know what records you keep and what records you don't keep, or how do you eradicate or clean up a record?
So that's a great question. So yes, we do. When we have our talks to whether it's Brewster Academy or to the Kingswood school population, that topic always comes up. And we do talk about the dangers of making the wrong choices and what happens when you develop a police record, especially if you're an adult, and how long that record is going to stay with you, and the procedures about having it, what is called expunged, right, from your record. And but even when you have a record expunged, and that's a great question, even when you have a criminal record expunged, you still have to answer truthfully on that application if you've ever been arrested. All right, and it's hard to get away from that. And yes, these if you've been arrested at 18 or 19 years old for even something as innocuous as underage drinking, right, or possession of alcohol, whatever the case may be, that could be a deciding factor in whether you get a college scholarship or whether you get financial aid. So there are tremendous implications here, and we do talk about the dangers of that. That is a common discussion every year.
I have just one more question. It's about mentors for high school kids. I know I benefited from, maybe you did too.
I think we all have.
And how to be a good mentor and how to look for the opportunity. I mean, it's tricky because you don't. I think it's difficult, at least I'll speak for myself, to understand what you do in the sense of, being a mentor and advising kids on law enforcement and this kind of thing. But it's almost like we need a mentor development program at times. Anyway, that was the question.
So, you brought up a question earlier too, and along with that, you were talking about police athletic leagues, and one of the things that I do want to mention, and this ties right into your question about mentorship, is that I have a number of my officers and dispatchers that serve as coaches to our various athletic teams in and around the area. Dispatcher Jim Savage, for example, is a very talented senior dispatcher with the Wolfeboro Police Department. He is both a lacrosse coach and a hockey coach. Captain Mark Livy, 2 years ago, was the assistant football coach at Kingswood. We've had officers in the past that have been tennis coaches, been soccer coaches, track and field coaches. So coaching is one of the areas, as you know, a mentor has an awful lot of influence on students and can point them in the right direction. So where we don't support necessarily, because we're not resourced for a police athletic league, we do coach in the various athletic programs in and around, and my officers and dispatchers are heavily involved in doing that, in coaching and mentoring, and that is one of the purposes behind the creation of the juvenile services officer and the school resource officer, so they can serve as those mentors in those community environments. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for your answers. Even though it's second nature to you, you're in a complex business.
Yes.
It's not something that's simple to figure out and explain to kids. And anything that improves the communications, I applaud. So thank you.
Communication is indeed key, and you're right. This is complex, and thank you for pointing that out. And it's a serious business, aside from being a complex business. And you know what? I know a lot of people. Oftentimes, they want yes or no, right or wrong, black and white answers. And I will tell you right now, when you're talking law enforcement, and it's not black and white. You know, the answers are seldom yes or no. They're complex. There's shades of gray all over the place here, and because it's human interaction, it's life. It's very complex. It's very challenging, and then there are interests and competing issues on both sides of an event or an incident, and some of these often pull at the heartstrings. One of the jobs that I have, and this is very important, is going to lead to a second issue that I often think about. One of the big jobs of a chief of police is to look at issues and try to fix them or put in fixes that will deal with those community issues and community challenges. That's the whole concept behind community policing, which is the type of policing that we practice here in Wolfeboro. It happens to be a policy of policing that I agree with, and I call it responsible policing. The point, though, is that sometimes these fixes require resources, and sometimes those resources can be time, sometimes it could be money, sometimes it could be both. But the important thing for me is to try to identify a community problem and then fix it. That's what we did with the juvenile services officer position we started 2 years ago. I identified the fact that when I'm arresting myself personally, when I'm arresting 3 generations of the same family, we have an issue. And it's not being fixed through the normal criminal justice procedure. And I have to try to take a step back and say, okay, why is this? Why do I have 3 generations of the same family that are recidivists? And then I have to try to, okay, we're going to have to try to get in this very difficult situation and wade into it and fix it. And it's just not one family, but it's multiple families that fall into this category. And I have to do the deep dive, and I have to critically look at this problem and try to identify where are the issues within society and what, if any, fixes I can put into this. And this is hard. It's time consuming, but this is the job of a chief of police. It's the job of an executive officer. It's where my senior command staff gets together and we look at what are the drivers of crime, what's driving the crime, why are we having certain spikes in certain areas. That's where the rubber meets the road with me, and I have to think strategically, okay, this is what I need to do to fix this particular problem. And it's a slow, methodical process, and it doesn't happen quickly overnight as much, as people say, well, I don't know what the problem is. You know who the drug dealers are, just go arrest them. Well, it's not quite that easy. And yes, we do know who the drug dealers are. But, we have to do things that are constitutionally approved, right? And we have to do things, we follow the law too. And we have to do things that are going to get us good arrests. And then we have to look at what's driving the drug use. And how do we put fixes in place? And some of the things that you were talking about in this show, Jim, the mentorship, the telling the kids the dangers of bad acts and bad behavior and how it's going to follow you. All of this is part and parcel of the big community solution. So here it is, right? Just don't look at the police department to be the fixer to the problem. Sure, I'll do the heavy lifting here, but it's up to you. It's up to you, the parents, you, mom and dad, you, grandma, grandpa, you, the cousins, uncles, the senior mentors, the leaders in the family, the matriarchs, the patriarchs of the families, to get involved and say, hey, that's not a good idea. don't do that. It's going to follow you, and it's going to be really bad. And you hit the nail on the head. Thanks for being on the show, Jim.
You're welcome. I'd just like to say thank you, and to all your officers. I really, really appreciate. We know you're first responders, but you're also the last response sometimes.
Thank you, sir.
You could be giving your life for this, literally. So we really understand and appreciate. I remember we lived out in Michigan for a long time, and the firm I worked for was a public accounting firm, but we offered some services and computer systems, and they had us work with the city of Detroit, which was fascinating.
Tough city. That's a tough city.
I talked to one policeman. I said, "What's your job?" And he said, "Keeping two 13-year-olds with handguns from killing each other."
Yeah.
And that's how bad it can get. Who's gonna win in that situation?
No one.
And you're in it. So thank you very much for your time and your sacrifice, your devotion.
Thank you very much, Jim. And happy New Year. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Hey, that was Jim Stevens, and we appreciated him being on the show. That was impromptu and great discussion. These are complex, tough issues. Societal issues always are. And but just because they're tough issues and difficult issues doesn't mean that we don't deal with them every day in the Wolfeboro PD, and myself and the captain and Staff Sergeant Maloney are always looking at these issues. We're always looking at the crime and the statistics and trying to dive down into that and find out what the root causes of these problems are. And once we identify them, we look to put in fixes. And that is really the job of the senior level leadership, right? We put in processes. We want to be proactive. Being reactive, sure, that's easy. But we want to be proactive, and that's difficult. That's really hard. Working with families, that's really hard. But we have a lot of good community partners. And I believe working together we can make a difference. So thank you very much for tuning in to Coffee and Connections with the Chief. Please tune in again in March for Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And Happy New Year to you. Be safe. Thank you. Stay tuned for your safety tip of the month. Hello, everybody. This is Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro PD, and welcome back to your safety tip of the month. So we're in February. All right, this one is going out to all you guys out there, right? Your safety tip of the month. 14 February, Valentine's Day. You got to remember that one, okay, fellas? This is for you. Remember that. This is your safety tip of the month. You can thank me later. Again, 14 February. Remember that date. This is your safety tip of the month. Thank you very much for tuning in to Coffee and Connections with the Chief. Don't blow this one, fellas. I'm counting on you. All right, 14 February. Remember that. Very important. Don't be a victim. Thank you very much. And have a great day. Happy New Year. And tune in again next month for another segment of Coffee and Connections with the Chief. For Chief Dean Rondeau and the entire Wolfeboro Police Department, Central Dispatch, have a safe and wonderful February. Thank you. Bye-bye.